Okay, it is 7 o'clock. Can y'all hear me? If I can get a thumbs up. Okay, see a few head shaking. Thank you so much. We've still got more people coming in, but I want to get started so that we can let you go and go on with your night, your exciting Monday night plans, I'm sure. Um, Thank you all so much for being here. There's so many names that I recognize, and I'm just so grateful for the work that you do. So much of it is volunteer time, and we just could not do what we do without you. So I'm really grateful for you. My name is Elise Nui, and I am the training specialist with the School Children's Trust section at the Utah State Board of Education. And I have with me here tonight, Kira Bennett as part of our team. She is over compliance. And she is wonderful and a total whiz with the numbers and all the important things that we need for our program. So we're grateful to her. And then we also have Paula Plant, who is our director and is just a wealth of information and a wonderful resource. And I'm sure many of you have talked to her on the phone and feel as grateful for her as I do. So thank you for being here tonight with us. With that, just a couple of notes. We are recording these sessions, and there will be a recording of one of the sessions, whichever one is the best, that will go out to everyone so that if you have colleagues or if you forget some information, you'll be able to look back on it. Also, we will be sending out a newsletter later this week that will include a recording of the session with the governor that we had 2 weeks ago. So if you missed that, you'll be able to see a recording of that as well. So with that, we can get started. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. There'll also be a chance where you can ask questions, or if you have another question, you can always email us as well. And we're happy to answer it at another time. I'm going to share my screen. You would think I'd be faster at this by now. Okay. So just really quickly, there's a lot to know about our program, and you're not going to be an expert overnight. And that's not what we expect. But we're hoping that these three things, these three topics will help you on your path to being a council member. So the first is a little bit of the history of the School Land Trust program and where it is that you are situated within this program. Secondly, what are your major rules and responsibilities? And then finally, where can you go when you have questions? So what are some resources that you can utilize as you are doing your time of service? So a little bit about the background. There are a lot of people that don't know about this program, and it is so unique and so wonderful. And so I like to start out with a little bit of a history of this program and what it has meant to the state of Utah. So this program actually began long before Utah was a state and back when we were founding our nation. And there was a conversation about how we were going to maintain democracy in this new nation. And there was an understanding and a consensus that we were probably going to need some education if we were going to have an educated populace to keep this democracy thing going. But the question was, how are we going to pay for education? We didn't have a lot of capital, didn't have a lot of cash. And so it was decided that as territories and states entered the union, they would set aside a certain percentage of land to fund public education. And so for a lot of areas, this meant that there was a little plot of land you could put your schoolhouse on and a little plot of land your teacher could live on. And that worked great for a while. But as I'm sure you can imagine, as our economy and our culture kind of became more complex, so did this program. And so when Utah entered the union, there were 6 million acres that were set aside for public education. So you can see in this map here, there are these like little blue squares kind of polka dotted throughout the map. And so Utah was divided up into townships, these little squares, and then each township was divided up into even smaller sections, of which 4 were set aside as land trust land. So you can see they all at the beginning kind of looked like this. Over time, some of this land gets traded out or moved around or bought and sold. And so you can see these clumps, like this one right here is a clump of land trust all in one area. But for the most part, those 6 million acres were not super well taken care of during the first 100 years or so of our statehood. Sometimes it was abused, sometimes it was just forgotten, but it wasn't taken very well care of. But in the 90s, there was a group of concerned educators and parents who knew of this program, had heard of this program, and began to advocate that we take better care of it, that we actually use it well, and so that students can benefit from these great lands. And so in the 90s, an agency called SITLA was created, and SITLA is still around, and it still cares for these lands and makes sure that they are well taken care of, that they are utilized well, that they are invested in. And so there's a few different ways that our land makes money. Some of it is oil and gas, some of it is renewable energy. There's a lot of it that is in development. A lot down near St. George is being developed. There's also across Utah Lake from me here in Provo, there's a housing development that is part of SITLA projects. Also, there's bits of hunting and four-wheeling and rock hounding. There's lots of different ways that this land makes money for public education, which is really incredible. And SITLA has done an amazing job of caring for these lands over the years. The next agency that's important to know is SITFO, and this one is much newer, because there was an understanding that once SITLA was making all this money, we could invest it and we could actually grow it and make it a much more sustainable, self-sustainable fund. And so SITFO is now the agency that invests that money, which is really awesome. There is now over $3 billion in that permanent fund, which is just incredible. The next agency that's important to know about is our agency. So where we work, and we get the amazing job of taking some of the earnings from that general fund and distributing it to all of the public schools throughout the state of Utah, which is a really great job that I have. So at the beginning, there was around $5 million that was distributed to the students across Utah. So this was about $10 per student, which was incredible. That was a really amazing thing. But we're really excited to tell you that it has only grown since then. And this last year, we distributed almost $96 million to public school kids throughout the state of Utah, which is awesome. Which means that you all are so very important, because you have the responsibility of figuring out how to best use these funds. Because that was the question. Once the legislature realized that we had this program and that there was funding coming in, they wanted to ensure that the funds were spent well and that they would be spent at a local level. And so they came up with this program with it's the School Land Trust Program, which includes school community councils. That means that at every state across the state of Utah, there is a group that comes together, a group made of parents, educators, and school leaders who talk about how to spend this money and what is the best use of the funds. And they thought that this was a good idea for 3 reasons. It has 3 major purposes. The first is that they wanted there to be collaboration between educators and schools and community members and families. And so this meant that there would be meaningful conversation between all of the invested parties, right? Parents and teachers and principals would all come together. The next purpose was that it would actually improve education, that the more stakeholders and the more people who are involved in a student's education, who are at the table having this conversation involving data and evidence-based strategies, the better kids would do. And so they thought this was a really great idea for that. And then finally, there was an understanding that this land trust hadn't always been a profitable system. It hadn't always been taken well care of. And so they thought, well, if we have parents and community members throughout the state of Utah who are invested in this program and can see what it can do, then we can have advocates for this program throughout the state of Utah. And so we hope that these 3 things, that you will be a part of these 3 main missions and purposes of this program. So with that, one of the really cool things about this program is that because it is at a local level, every school community council or charter council looks a little bit different. You might have different meeting schedules, you might have different responsibilities in addition to your land trust plan. And so it's always such a great opportunity to talk to members throughout the state of Utah to find out what other people are doing and how they're doing it. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk to others. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms for probably about 10 minutes. And you can talk about whatever you want, whatever questions are on your mind, but here are some good ideas if you need an idea. How long have you been involved in your council? What inspired you to participate? What are some of your current questions or wonderings or concerns about your council work this year? Okay, I'll put you into groups and give you just a chance to chat. So about 10 minutes. Okay. All right, so you can join your group at your convenience. Hey, Paula, I'm gonna move you. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay, just wanted to make sure you knew where you were going. Okay. Sorry, if you've just joined us, we had just gotten into breakout rooms to just kind of chat about your experience with school community councils or charter councils and how long that's been, and kind of what are your questions or concerns or wonderings about councils. So we'll probably be in breakout rooms for another like 3 minutes, and then we'll be back. Hey, Sarah and Abby, those of you that just joined, we had just gotten into breakout groups to just kind of chat for a minute about our experiences with councils and our history with them and questions that we have. So if you just hold tight for about 2 minutes, everyone will come back in and we'll get going. So thanks for your patience. All right. Thank you all. So anyone mind sharing some of the questions that came up or concerns or things that you want to make sure that we hit on today, or anything that
I can go, Elise, for our group. Yeah. And I think, this was one person voicing it, but I felt this way 4 years ago when I first started. So I think it's probably something that a lot of people maybe feel, but the question was kind of more around understanding maybe who drives the SEC within the school. And this person just kind of felt like, well, the school drives it and we just kind of just vote things. And I definitely felt that way 4 years ago, and I'm a chair now, but like 4 years ago when I first started, I felt that way too. And my perspective, but I'd love to hear yours, but my perspective is I think that leadership is a big deal. And I think it depends on the leadership that is being portrayed as the chair or as the principal, on how it kind of plays out in the school. But I'd be curious to hear your perspective and how it really is supposed to be ran, within the school.
That's a great one. And I hear that a lot. There's always a lot of questions and confusion around that. So yeah, I'm going to make sure to hit that one. Thank you so much for sharing, Tiffany. Is there anything else?
Well, as vice chair, that was the same question I had
Okay.
when we had our breakout. So that's great.
Okay, perfect. I'll be sure to focus on that. Anything else? Okay. All right. Well, if things come up, again, please put them in the chat or, shout them out if you feel comfortable, or send us an email. We want to make sure we get your questions answered. So to address that, we're going to start right here. So school community councils, while there is the three of us at the state level, and we help you to make sure that things are running smoothly and that all the laws are followed, this really is a locally controlled unit. And so it does look different when you go from district to district, school to school. They look a little bit different. And so that's going to play out in different ways. But one of the core aspects of this program is that you are a team with the 4 following groups. So your school board or your charter board, if you're at a charter, really plays a role in kind of directing and guiding. They're like the captain of the ship, right? They're leading you where they need to go as a big picture. And then the principal or the director of your school is a big part of this council. They play a big role in kind of connecting all the dots and making sure information gets from the school board and the state to parents and to educators, right? Teachers play a big role as well because they have that expertise and that on the ground experience of what it's like to be in a classroom with students at your school. And then parents. And by design, parents have a major role to play in this process. And we're going to talk more about that because that is a really important point. So first, there is the structure of your council, and this has been very deliberate in the law. So the law is that parents have to have the majority of the council vote. So there needs to be a 2-parent majority. So an easy way to think of this, if you have 1 principal and 1 teacher, then you have to have at least 4 parents to ensure that there's like a 2-parent majority, right? If you increase school members, then you need to be increasing parents so that there's always a 2-parent majority. This is the legal requirement. And then if you are at a charter, it's a little bit different. There still needs to be that majority, because parents are really meant to drive this process. They are meant to have the majority vote. They are meant to chair the council and to really drive the conversation that's happening, because it is meant to be unique and different from other systems that exist already in our education system, right? So when it comes to who is on the council and kind of how that comes to be, you have a 2-year term. So now that you're voted in, congratulations, you have a 2-year term, and you can have as many terms as you have a student at the school. So if my kid is in kindergarten, I can keep serving until my daughter graduates in 6th grade, right? I can even serve the year after, so long as she was in that school for 1 year of my service. So of the 2 years, she was there for 1 year. Does that make sense? And then also by law, the different terms of the different members on your council need to be staggered, right? So half of your council membership is voted in on an odd year and half is voted in on an even year. And that just makes sense because you never really want a full council that's brand new and is learning all together. That's really hard to get anything meaningful work done. And so if half of you are new and the other halves have a little bit of experience and can guide the rest through the process, it just goes a little bit smoother. So here's the specific jobs of each of the groups as determined by law, right? So your school board or the charter board is really in charge of setting the priorities. They set the goals. So there's a couple districts that are really interested in fine arts, right? So they let all of their councils know we're really big on ELA and math, but also let's focus on the arts when we have a chance, right? And they set those priorities and let everyone know what those are. They also make sure that everyone gets trained. That again is up to the district or the board to decide how that happens. For some, they say, go watch the videos on Zoom at 7:00 at night. Other ones, they say, we're going to run our own trainings. And it just depends on how they choose to do that. And all are okay. And then they also read all your plans. So when you write this plan on how you're going to spend the land trust money, they are the really important group that reads it and makes sure that it makes sense with the goals, with the other budget considerations of the district, all of those things. Then comes the principal. And the principal is hugely important because they connect all the dots, right? They actually upload the plan to the website. They ensure and they put their name on everything to say that, yes, we did this according to law. Yes, we did this right. They make sure that you have all the information that you need to make informed decisions. So if you have a question about, well, what does this data mean? Your principal is the person who can go track down all the scores, or someone who can explain how these assessments are administered and all of that. So they are very important in that role. However, the chair is meant by law to run your school community council. So they are supposed to set the agenda. They are supposed to run the meetings. They're supposed to ensure that the website gets updated. That's what it says in the law. But understanding that if you're a brand new chair and you've never done this before, your principal is going to help a lot, right? And so this is really kind of a spirit of the law thing. You work together as a team with your principal, and there shouldn't be this feeling of like, well, I'm just a parent. I'm going to sit back and I'm scared to. No, you should feel like the law is on your side to say, this is, I need more training. I can take on more leadership, right? So you want to feel like you're in partnership with your principal and with those teachers on your council, and that you're working together toward a common goal. If you're feeling like you can't do that, if you're feeling like it's difficult, you can always ask for more training. I'll give you some resources that you can go to get trained more. You could talk to those people at your district and say, hey, I just think it might be a great idea if we get a little bit more training. Reach out to other people on your council, maybe other council chairs somewhere in the district, and say, hey, like, how can we, because it really should feel like a partnership and not butting heads, because then the kids suffer, right? So the chair really does lead the meetings as much as you can. And then all the other members are hugely important as well. So we just had a question. What does the chair do if there's not a parent majority? So one thing that I always suggest is you can use us as the bad guys. You can go to your principal and say, hey, I just went to this training at the state. It was great. It was wonderful. One thing they said was that there should be a parent majority, and I noticed we didn't have one. What can we do about that? Right? So instead of going into it combatively, you can use us as the bad guy and say, how can we resolve this together? And then if there's a problem, you can go to your district and then come to us. And yes, Sarah, we're going to talk just about what the land trust plan is. So we will go over a few of those. So thank you. So then the members, it's really important that if you are a member that you are at all of the meetings. You sign your name to the plan that we'll talk about in a minute, saying that you support it, that you were there, that you understand what's going on. And you can only do that if you've been a part of the conversation. So we ask that you're please there for as many of the meetings as you can be. Some meetings are now held like virtually or hybrid options. So you can, show up virtually if that's a need, but try to be as present and participative, that's the word, as possible. Okay. So what are some of the things that you're going to talk about as a council? Actually, first of all, did I answer those questions about kind of who takes the lead over councils? Does that help? Are there more questions about that? Okay. All right. Oh, another good clarifying question. Does there have to be a parent majority per meeting, or just a parent majority that initially signed up? So yes and no for both. There has to be a parent majority of membership on the council. So when we look at your roster and say who is on your council, we look to make sure that there is a parent majority. There also needs to be a parent majority present when you vote on your plan. So in fancy terms, we talk about a quorum. So a majority of the entire council has to be present in order to do any voting, to do any official business. And so you need your quorum present. So a majority of the council, which means that there should be enough parents there. Paul, is there anything else? Did I clarify that? That was good. Okay. So both essentially is the short answer. So what are all the things you're going to talk about? Initially, the legislature just said that you were over the school land trust plan, which is wonderful. And we'll talk about that in a second. But since then, they've realized that parents and the school community council are such a wealth of perspective and insight that they gave you other responsibilities as well. So a few of the things that they've suggested that school community councils have conversations about and potentially take some actions if it's appropriate is school safety, digital citizenship, and the teacher and student success plan. So for school safety, for example, in our district, a big one is always crosswalks. And so our district has asked, hey, school community councils, in addition to your land trust plan, can you also discuss where your school, like, can kids get to school safely? And if not, what can we do to improve that? And then they take our suggestions and they take them to the city council and they propose them there. So we don't make any formal decisions, but we make recommendations. Same kind of thing with digital citizenship. You can reach out to your principal, your district, and say, hey, what's the plan? How are we ensuring that our kids are safe on the internet, that they are digitally literate? And you can talk about that at your meetings. Some districts or schools have very formal ways of doing this. They have like subcommittees and things like that. Some don't. So again, it's going to look different depending on where you are, but know that these are things that you can have conversations about and make recommendations about. And then finally, the teacher and student success plan. This is a separate plan that schools create. In some places, it's the school improvement plan. And it's just a plan that sets out kind of what the priorities of the school are, how they're going to spend these separate funds to ensure that kids continue to learn. And so you don't have to have read that and know it super well. But the idea is that if you're going to create a plan about how students can achieve, that it also kind of aligns with this other plan about how students achieve, right? That they're headed in the same direction. So it's a helpful resource. And then finally, the school land trust plan. This is the one that you sign your name to. You make a decision about, you help to write it, and you sign off on it saying that it is the plan for your school. So we'll spend the rest of the time talking about that. So a couple of things to note. You are an elected representative of your community. Now, you may have been appointed because there wasn't enough people who wanted to be on the school community council that you could have an election. But the idea is that you are a representative of your community. So there's kind of two ways that this plays out. The first way that you're ensuring that you represent your community is by making sure that the work that you do as part of your council is available on the internet. So on your school website, you should have a couple of things on your website to make sure that everyone knows what's happening. The first is council membership. If I move into a new school and I want to know who's on the school community council, I should be able to go to the school website and see a list of names. I should also have a way to get in contact with you. In the past, that meant that you had to have your email address or phone number on the website. We had some problems with scammers and it was awful and terrible. And so we changed the rule a little bit. So it's just a direct way to contact people. So in our district, for example, they included a link. So if you see my name, you can click on my name and it'll bring up a little box. So it'll email me directly. So no one can see my email address, but your email will get directly to my email inbox, if that makes sense. Other districts have just changed the way that the email address is written so that scammers can't copy paste it, if that makes sense as well. So just know that, as well as a proposed meeting schedule. So your meetings are open. Anyone can come and listen to what you talk about. Your minutes also, so people on the back end could come in and look at what you've been talking about. A link to that teacher and student success plan so other people can see, hey, are these kind of headed in their same direction, this school land trust plan and this school improvement plan. And then finally, make sure that people feel welcome, that they feel welcome to come, not only to come and listen to the meetings, but also to run next year as a school community council member. Another really important piece of how you make this a community effort and you represent your community is by ensuring that you have rules of order and procedure. So if you are on a school community council, or if you're on a charter council that has set up a separate school land trust council, you'll need rules of order and procedure. And this is essentially, if you've ever been in a classroom where the teacher laid out, here are the norms for a difficult conversation, or here are the norms of our classroom, this is essentially the norms of your council. So a few things that you want to have on there, things like your membership. How many parent members do you have? How many teacher members do you have? You'll want to have this in place before you run into an issue. The roles and responsibilities. So what exactly does a chair do? What exactly does a vice chair do? What if you want to have other roles? Some have PTA liaisons, some have secretaries. Lay all that out so it's clear for everyone. What happens if someone doesn't show up after they've been elected? They don't show up for 1, 2, 3 meetings. Then what happens? Also, how you're going to deal with conflicts of interest. This comes up sometimes. Say that you have a parent on the council who is also a paraprofessional at the school, and their salary is paid for by the land trust plan. They can still serve. That is fine. We want parents to participate, but maybe we should have a conversation about what that means, right? What the implications of that are. Or maybe my spouse works at a curriculum company. Maybe we want to talk about that before we start suggesting what curriculum we're going to buy, right? So just make those conversations public. Other things you'd want to talk about and put into these rules of order and procedure would be your elections. What are the processes? What does this look like? What are the procedures? What happens if there's a tie? Just kind of think of your nightmare scenarios and then come up with a plan now, so you don't have to deal with it when it comes up. And then finally, your agendas and your meetings. How do people get on the agenda if they want to? Say you have a community member who's really concerned about XYZ and they would like the community council to talk about it. Is that something you want to address? How do you want that to come up? Do you want them to email you? Do you want them to show up and have a public comment period? It's up to you what that looks like, because your community is going to be unique in its own ways. So talk about what the best way to handle that for your council is, and then put that into the rules so it's clear for everybody. Okay, so with that, are there any questions about kind of the procedural aspects or the... Okay. All right, I'm going to put you guys into groups again. Hopefully that's useful time to be able to talk about kind of what things have come up in your council. What other questions do you have? Is there any helpful tips that you have to offer, especially those of you who've been doing this for a while? I know you have a wealth of information. So let's see. Okay, they are open. We'll do like 5 minutes this time. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Did anybody have any questions or good advice? Hear anything that was useful that everyone could benefit from? Let's see.
Well, we had more talk about your rules and orders of procedure
Uh-huh.
type information. And I commented the fact that I would definitely probably come along a lot faster as vice chair once I got that completely under my belt. One question I didn't have a chance to ask
Yeah.
was, what if you have parents coming in that may not, I mean, other than the school land trust part itself,
Mm-hmm.
if they're expecting an organization more like the PTSA, how do we educate the people on the difference between the PTSA and the SCC, for example?
That is a really good question. Does anyone have any good advice? I have a few ideas, but anyone
Because
have?
we have both.
Okay.
Yeah, we have both. We have both also. And one of the things I was mentioning to my breakout group was in our, and I don't know if this is common or not, but in our rules and procedures, we have listed that the PTA president is an automatic member without voting rights. And I think that it's critical because I don't think that sometimes SCC and PTA even understand what the differences are sometimes. And so I think that when you have the PTA president and the SCC chair in the same meetings, right, for both sides, that it helps to really kind of understand where each group, what their roles and responsibilities are. And so I think that's been really helpful for us to see the differences between the two groups. And I'm not answering your question exactly, Tim, but I just wanted to add that because it's been really helpful to have that PTA president as part of our SCC group as well.
Oh, that's a good idea, because I don't think when we've gone around the room, anybody's introduced themselves as the PTSA president in our meeting. So maybe I'll propose that. I like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And part of, I mean, I know PTAs, even there's a lot of rules for PTA as well, but even those function a little bit differently at different levels and the way those come together at different schools. So it's helpful, I think, to just have the faces and the names and
Yeah, just the pipeline between the two.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Was there any other good answers to this question or other questions? Okay, so the last thing that we were going to talk about was the all important land trust plan. So like I said earlier, this money comes to each school individually. And the idea being that you know best as a community member, as a parent, as a principal, as a teacher, you know best what your students need to be successful. And so you're going to come up with a plan as a group about what you need to have happen. We're going to talk about how that happens. So the first thing to know is that you need to focus on the greatest academic need. Now, the legislature has laid out what the options are for this greatest academic need. And they want you to focus, if you're in elementary school, on math, science, and ELA. Now, if you've got those covered and you can show like our kids are phenomenal in these three areas, you can focus on other things. Or if your goals already address these and you still have more money, you can look at other things. But for the most part, you're really focusing on these three areas. If you're in secondary school, you can also look at graduation rate and college and career readiness. So these are kind of the overarching umbrellas of where your plans are going, is to get academic achievement in one of these areas. Now, the actual process of what that looks like is going to look pretty much the same at every school. Even though your plans may look very different, the process is very much the same. So you're going to begin with data. So always begin with the data. And this is where your principal and your teachers are invaluable, because they're going to be able to explain the data to you and kind of what it's saying and give you options for data to look at, all of these things. And so even before you get, sometimes parents say, well, my principal just shows up with the plan and hands it to us and asks us to vote on it. you should be asking now and saying, hey, what kinds of data can we be looking at? We have all these questions. How are our kids doing in ELA? How are they doing in math? Can we look at some of the data? And the principal can show that to you. Next is the goal. So once you decide, okay, here's where our students are at, you're going to decide where you want to put your focus and make a goal for achievement. Then how you're going to measure it, how you're going to make sure that they actually achieve. Then you get to do the exciting part, which is making a list of the action steps. What are all the things that we can do to help our students achieve in this area? And then finally, kind of your shopping list. What are all the things that we're going to need to pay for in order to make this happen? So just as a quick example from my daughter's school, we looked through all the data and saw that only 60% of our students, of K through second grade students, were on reading level. And so we decided this was the area we were going to focus. Our greatest academic need was ELA. And so we're going to make a goal that we're going to move that to 80% of our students in K through second grade. We talked to our teachers. Our teacher said, hey, we're doing a cadence assessment already. This makes sense for us. This is how we're going to measure it. And they explained that to us and we were on board. And then came the fun part where we got to think, how can we help our students improve their reading level, right? And so we decided to do full day kindergarten. So every class was a full day kindergarten class to increase the amount of instructional assistance, right? So there's a greater teacher to student ratio. That we were going to implement some technology interventions. The teachers mentioned that this is something they really needed in order to improve their ELA teaching. And then finally, art and music. They brought up the idea that this was a way that we could help our students improve their reading levels was actually through art and music enrichment. And so that was a really exciting program to implement. And then we laid out, and the principal really helped us, what are all the things we're going to need to pay for in order to make these action steps happen? So as you can see, even though our goal was very much about this greatest academic need, your action steps can be pretty broad as long as they're addressing that goal, right? So you can bring in things like arts and music and digital citizenship. If you're in a high school and you're looking at ELA and you're doing, lots of research papers in your ELA class, it's really hard to do a good research paper these days unless you know how to use the internet wisely, right? So digital citizenship might be a part of your ELA goal, right? So think broadly and really listen to your teachers and your principals and what they have to say and their expertise. So we kind of went through this very quickly, and you're probably going to have more questions if you're new. So here are some places you can go to find resources. The first is our website, and this is the website where your principal or director goes to upload your plan. But if you sign on there, this blue part right here, public reports, you can access the plan, the school land trust plan for every school in our state. So if you're looking for ideas or just kind of what the different options are for how these look, take a look there. And I've put all of these links in the chat so you can see them. This one is the public reports page. Another place you can go, YouTube. There's a USBE Land Trust YouTube page, and there you can find all of our past trainings as well as our upcoming trainings will all be on there as they become available. We also have a site on the Utah State Board of Education website, and there you can find a template for the rules of order and procedure, a really basic one that you can start as kind of the template for that discussion. You can see that in the chat. It's the School Land Trust USBE site. And then also the rules of order and procedure template are linked there as well. And then we also send out a monthly newsletter to all of the council members throughout our state. So if you got my emails before, you're on the list and you'll be getting our first newsletter this month. And there you'll find like the recording of this training here tonight, a recording with our meeting with the governor, other updated little videos. We're trying to send out more videos that are even shorter so you can get a lot of information in a quick amount of time because I know we're all busy. Also, if you have really great ideas, if you're doing something amazing with your council that you'd love to share with others, send me an email and I would love to put it in the newsletter so that we can get the word out for the great things that you all are doing. And then if you ever are having a concern or a question, or you would just like more additional training, either for you or for your council, this is a link to my bookings page, and we can set up a time where we can do that either in person or over Zoom. Also, one quick plug, we are trying to get our resources into as many hands as possible. And so we're working on translating them into Spanish. If you have Spanish skills or other high frequency languages, if you could send me an email, and if you would be willing to review some of our resources and make sure that they actually make sense, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Let's see, we just had a quick question. Our school goals and plans and those of other schools that I've read seem pretty similar. Do you have suggestions where to go to find some creative goals and plans to achieve those goals? So a lot of them are really similar, just because the needs right now are a lot of people need instructional assistants and paraprofessionals, right? Those kinds of things. So a lot are similar, but one resource that I found that's really helpful, and it's not our resource, but PTA put together a school community council's Facebook group. And there's a link to that in the links that I shared. And that's a really great place to just go and crowdsource and say, hey, what are some great things y'all are doing? And people can share there. Will you talk about the app, the YAP? Tiffany, can you tell me more?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I thought that it was well known. Maybe.
No, I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe it's not. So I went to a meeting where, what's his name? David Stevenson? I can't think of his name right now. But anyways, he talked about the new SCC app. And I don't know if it's district specific though. So maybe that's where I might be misspoken. But anyways, it's a SCC app. And it's really just kind of a resource meant to serve SCC members to learn more about duties, to interact with other SCC members, to share best practices. And the app is called YAP, YAPP. Oh, Jessica. Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Because I don't know. I guess I didn't know that. I just had posted a couple of things on there because I was looking for ideas, and there's not a whole lot of people on there. And so I was like, oh, it'd be nice if people knew about this, but you're right. I think maybe it is for Alpine. So I apologize.
No, I'm sure there's lots. Alpine is a huge district, so I'm sure there's other parents here from Alpine, and I would love to find out more about that. So I'm going to go find out more, see what we can do. Any other questions or anything else before we go?
I have one more question. Sorry.
Yes.
What the link that you put in there for the public reports page, I'm clicking on that and it does not look like what yours looked like. So are you able to maybe elaborate on where we would find that actual link?
So it doesn't look like this?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, let me put a new.
Yeah, can you just do it that way and then see if I can click on it and see if it goes there.
See if it goes there. So this part where it says like login and new account, that's for principals and all of that, but this public reports link should be good for everybody.
Okay.
Did that work?
Yeah, now it works.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Oh, good. Thank you. Okay. If there's not any other questions, if you have other questions, please email us, call us. My name is Elise Nui. And this is my phone and email address. Paula Plant is our director and Kira Bennett is over compliance. And you can email us anytime, give us a call, and we're happy to help. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope you have a wonderful night and that I will see you soon in the future. Thank you, everyone.